When an artist is looking to come out with an album, one of the big considerations is the title. What are you going to call the album? Is it going to be one of the songs on the album that you think is going to be the big hit? Could it be a hidden lyric, or maybe just something that came to top of mind, just top of the head? Or there are some times when the band's brainstorming and all of a sudden it goes, hey, you know something? Let's name it after us. And that's what we're going to be looking at today. Some classic self-titled albums. Get ready to hit that play button because this video is going vinyl. Hello again, and welcome to another edition of Goin Vinyl, the program that brings you the tracks and stacks that take us all back. I'm your host, Bill Robert, and today we're talking about self-titled albums, or as you see in Rolling Stone, eponymously titled albums, but I'm just going to call them self-titled albums. And music history is replete with these self-titled albums. I mean, just in the rock era, Prince's album Prince comes to mind. Genesis had a self-titled album. It gave us the hits Mama, and that's all. The Beatles had a self-titled album. Yeah, a lot of people say, oh, the Beatles, they didn't have a self-titled album. Well, they did. They had an album called The Beatles. They just don't remember it as that because most of us refer to it as the White Album. And we're going to start with record number 1 today. It's from the group Heart, and the name of the album is Heart. Back in the early to mid-'80s, Heart really... They had fallen on some hard times. They weren't having the chart success they used to, and their label had dropped them, and they were kind of looking for some new stuff. Capitol picked them up, and in 1985, they came out with this. Now, it wasn't just a new album. It was a new approach. It was a new sound. Basically, it was a reboot. It was almost like Heart 2.0, basically. Before we get to Heart and Heart, let's get to the heart of this conversation, basically, the inner groove. The album Heart, from the group Heart. Released on June 21st of 1985. It was their first album for Capitol Records, and the lineup, Ann Wilson is always handling lead vocals. Some lead vocals were also handled by Ann's sister, Nancy Wilson, who also played guitars and mandolin. Howard Leese, who's been a band member forever, he handled guitars, keys, and backing vocals. Rounding out the lineup, Denny Carmassi on bass and Mark Andes on bass. And as far as sales, the album went 5 times platinum in the U.S., selling 5 million copies. Quite a bit of sales there, and a nice comeback for the group Heart. And the other interesting thing about this too is you look at the songwriting credits, and Ann and Nancy Wilson a lot of times wrote a good part, the lion's share of the songs. But in this particular case, they still wrote a whole bunch of songs, but all the hits were actually, they were farmed out. They were written by other people. For instance, Never, which was a huge hit for them off this album, was written by Holly Knight, who actually wrote things like Better Be Good to Me for Tina Turner. She wrote Love is a Battlefield and Invincible for Pat Benatar. I mean, just some great credentials there. These Dreams was co-written by Elton John's songwriting partner, Bernie Taupin. So they actually went out and they went around the room and get some different ideas. And also, there's a cover on here too. In fact, the cover starts off the album, and this is probably still my favorite track off this album. Side 1, cut 1, a great starter, If Looks Could Kill. If Looks Could Kill, You'd Be Lying on the Floor. This is actually similar to Barracuda, and that Ann Wilson, in her singing, there's an anger. It's like, you've just basically disturbed the lioness. She is not having it, and you will have to pay. It comes through in that song Barracuda, obviously, because that was a very, the origins of that song were very angry. And this one here, too, although this one, once again, it was a cover, but still, just the way Ann plays it up with the vocals, it's fantastic. So, once again, it is my favorite track off the album, and it is very much a track of its decade, because if you listen to the production, they compress it a lot. I mean, it was a lot of the mid-'80s especially. You had a ton of compression on the records. The dynamic range was kind of sacrificed a little bit, and they squashed it, making it loud for top 40 radio. So If Looks Could Kill is track number 1. Now, track number 2, this is the single that started the comeback. This was actually the first single released from the album, and was a huge hit, went top 10 right away, and put Heart back on the map. And it's one of their first big power ballads, What About Love?
You've been never letting it show, always trying to keep it under control. You got it down, and you're well on your way to the top.
Now, there are some diehard Heart fans that really kind of chafed at the new image and some of the new music. It's like, oh, it's poppier, it's not as rocky, and I'm not sure I like this new direction, you know. And like I said, you know, my favorite song off this album is the rockier one, If Looks Could Kill. So some of this other stuff just never really resonated with me. But still, I mean, obviously, just as far as a classic self-titled album, this is it. So we just did the power ballad, What About Love? And now we mentioned the song before I mentioned was written by Holly Knight. This one was a monster hit. This one was Never.
We will surely never get away. Anything you want, we can make it happen. Stand up and turn around. Never let them shoot us down. Never, never, never run away.
The thing that keeps me coming back to Heart, Ann Wilson. Just an amazing vocalist. She's got such range. She's got such depth and power, and just I love hearing her sing. So this next song that we're going to now is actually the first song from Heart to hit #1 on the U.S. Top 40 chart. And as much as I just went on about Ann Wilson's vocals, the vocals on this one, actually, the lead vocals, belong to Ann's sister Nancy. This is These Dreams.
I want to see you clearly. Come closer than this. But all I remember are the dreams in the mist. These dreams go on when I close my eyes. Every second of the night, I live another life.
These Dreams is so aptly titled because you listen to the arrangement of the song, it is dreamy and atmospheric and ethereal, and Nancy's gentle vocals just do such a great job with it. And the funny thing about this record and the feel of it is it was not only #1 on the Billboard Pop chart, it was also #1 on the Billboard Adult Contemporary chart. I worked at a number of adult contemporary radio stations over the years on air, and I used to play this one a lot. So this came up, and this was a huge hit. But it also exposed them to a little newer audience, because before, obviously, you know, the rock fans, you know, dug their stuff. Magic Man, Barracuda, Even It Up, Heartless. I mean, some great bangers. But this actually opened them up, you know, to a popular audience and also adult contemporary radio. You don't hear a lot of contemporary radio stations playing Barracuda, but this one went through for them. So after These Dreams comes the last track on side 1 called The Wolf, not the Wolf, The Wolf, and we're going to skip past that, and we're also going to skip past the first tracks on the second side as well. After all, we did 4 songs from track 1. So side 2 here, it's track #1, All Eyes. We're going to skip over that. Track 2 as well, Nobody Home. We're going to skip over that. However, one of those singles I mentioned that went top 10, you know, that's also on side 2. It's track 3, and it's called Nothing at All.
I would feed myself on the silence, wash it down with empty nights. Then your innocent distractions hit me so hard. My emotional reaction caught me off guard. It was nothing at all, like anything I had felt before.
So Nothing at All is definitely, it's a more up-tempo song than, say, What About Love or These Dreams, but it still doesn't have, like, you know, the classic Heart hardcore rockiness to it. It's much more of an accessible pop song. And once again, they had a hit with that too. Once again, 5 singles. In fact, this is the thing that kills me here. 5 singles released from this album. There was What About Love, Never, These Dreams, Nothing at All, and then the final single I mentioned before, my favorite track on this album, If Looks Could Kill. Okay, after that streak of 4 top 10 singles, If Looks Could Kill was released as a single, and it didn't even hit the top 40. It topped out at number 54. Makes me very sad. But anyway, so the last song we heard was Nothing at All, one of those top 10 hits from Heart and the Heart album. And the last 2 tracks, we'll skip over those as well and finish things out here. What He Don't Know, and then Shell Shock, and those are the last 2 tracks on the album. And that'll finish our look at our first self-titled album today. Record #1, the album is Heart, the band is Heart. And now to record 2 in our look at self-titled albums, Peter Gabriel by Peter Gabriel. How could we do a show on self-titled albums without doing at least one record from the king of the self-titled albums? Of course, we're talking about Peter Gabriel. Now, Peter Gabriel's first album came out in 1977, and it was this one. And it was simply titled Peter Gabriel. His next album came out in 1978. It was called Peter Gabriel. His third album came out around 1980. It was called Peter Gabriel. The next album after that was also called Peter Gabriel, but in the U.S., the record company, they're like, okay, enough of this Peter Gabriel stuff. They actually titled it Security. So if you're in the UK, this is Peter Gabriel. If you're in the US, this is actually the Security album. We're going to focus on Gabriel's third solo album, the one we call Melt. And before we get to this album, let's get to The Inner Groove. Peter Gabriel's third solo album, aka Melt, was released on May 30th of 1980 by Charisma Records in the UK. The US release was delayed because Atlantic, which was Gabriel's original U.S. label, they didn't think the album was commercial enough, so they decided to just kind of let Gabriel go. So they struck a deal with Mercury to release the record in 1980, and then when Gabriel signed with Geffen Records, when the rights to this album basically came available in 1983, Geffen did a re-release. So basically the album was released twice in the U.S., first time by Mercury, then by Geffen a few years later. As far as the lineup, Peter Gabriel did vocals, also piano and synth. Guitars were handled by David Rhodes, Robert Fripp of King Crimson, Dave Gregory, and Paul Weller of The Jam. John Giblin played bass, Tony Levin played Chapman Stick, and then drums were handled by Jerry Marotta, and also old friend Phil Collins. Morris Pert took care of percussion, Dick Morrissey played the saxophone, and Kate Bush provided backing vocals. The album was produced by Steve Lillywhite, and the album actually hit number 1 in the UK, also in France, and hit number 7 in Canada. In the US, it peaked at 22. It hit gold in the UK with sales of 100,000 units. It hit double platinum in Canada with 200,000 units sold. And so here we go, the third Peter Gabriel self-titled album, aka Melt, and we're going to get right into it now. And the first thing you're going to recognize is the drums in the opening part of this song coming from Phil Collins. We mentioned in the Inner Groove that Collins did play on this. Now, Gabriel had an interesting rule for this album where his drummers, be it Jerry Marotta or Phil Collins, were not allowed to use cymbals. So it makes for an interesting sound in the album. But this opening one, the drum track, it's all Phil Collins. This is Intruder. So Intruder, between the drums and the synth and the other instruments going on, it's definitely getting a very creepy kind of feel, someone sneaking through. And, the lyrics too, I know something about opening windows and doors. I mean, it's just it's such a great atmosphere. It's just a really kind of creepy song, and it's very much on edge, but nonetheless, it's a great way to start off the album here and really show us what Gabriel's got to offer here as he's really mixing things up and using a lot of creativity and imagination here. And that continues into the second track here. Once again, some interesting sounds, but some great lyrics and some great singing too from Gabriel himself. No Self-Control.
I know I've gone too far, much too far I've gone this time. Don't wanna think what I've done, 'cause I don't know how to stop, I don't know how to stop. There are always hidden silences waiting behind the chair.
I don't know how to stop. I don't know how to stop. No Self-Control. That's a side 1, track 2 off of the third Peter Gabriel solo album, as we know it, Melt. The next track is called Start, and we're going to skip over that and get to number 4. Now, this is an interesting one, not just because of the interesting instrumentation or the lyrics or the sound of Gabriel, but also Tony Levin, one of my favorite bass players of all time, shows up in this one, but he's not playing the bass. He's playing a specialized instrument called the Chapman Stick, and you can hear it throughout the sound. It just gives the sound such a... take 3. I don't know how to stop. I don't know how to stop. No Self-Control. Once again, some interesting soundscapes being put together by Peter Gabriel, and just a creative way he does the instrumentation, and obviously his vocals too. He just has such an interesting way of coaxing different sentiments out of his singing voice. Now the next track is a song called Start, and we're going to skip over that, but we're going to go to the next one here. It's got such a great, unique sound, and part of it is the fact that Tony Levin shows up, and Tony Levin's one of my favorite bass players of all time. But he's also very much fluent on another instrument, a specialized instrument called the Chapman Stick, which is like a guitar in a way, but it's a stringed instrument, and you tap it, and you listen to Levin's piece in this, it just makes the song sound so unique. It's just such a great, great unique feel to the song. This one's called I Don't Remember.
You'll have to take me just the way that you find me. What's gone is gone and I do not give a damn. Empty stomach, empty head, I've got empty heart and empty bed. I don't remember. I don't remember. I don't remember. I don't recall.
I Don't Remember was a terrific, terrific song. And the next two songs we're going to skip over on side one. Track 5, Family Snapshot. Now, I'm going to give it a quick mention because it's an interesting study behind the mind of someone who is planning an assassination. And it goes through the moments leading up to him committing the act. But then at the end, there's a flashback that shows you the seed of where this personality began to develop. And there are different components and different parts of this, and it's a story that goes over. And for this show, obviously, we take like 20 to 30 second clips, and I don't think that I would be doing this song justice if I just did a quick excerpt like that. So we'll just scan over. If you're curious about it, pick up the album, stream it, whatever. Check out Family Snapshot. It's an absolutely amazing tune. Another tune I like that we're going to skip over to is the last track on side 1, And Through the Wire. We're going to flip the side now, go to side 2. And the first one, you might recognize the vocalist that's with Peter Gabriel on this one. It's Kate Bush, as in, well, obviously, if you've been like collecting records as long as I have, you know who Kate Bush is. If you're more of a current member of the audience, if you're younger, you probably recognize her from Running Up That Hill, which came back into fame thanks to Stranger Things a couple of years ago. But anyway, this is Peter Gabriel, Kate Bush, and an interesting take on international affairs, almost done like it's a nursery school. This is Games Without Frontiers.
Suki plays with Leo, Sasha plays with Brit, Adolf builds a bonfire, Enrico plays with it. Whistling tunes, we hide in the dunes by the seaside. Whistling tunes, we're kissing baboons in the jungle.
Games Without Frontiers, Peter Gabriel, and by the way, special guest star Kate Bush, who would appear once again in his single Don't Give Up off the So album, a couple of studio albums down the road. So that's that one there. We're going to go right from track 1 of side 2, which is Games Without Frontiers, right to the next track, which once again is a great one, and is one that I think is relevant again. And when you listen to a little bit of it, you'll see why, and I'll explain after we hear the clip of the song there. This one's called Not One of Us. So Not One of Us. It's about the tendency of people to get together in their little groups, and then other people maybe not as much. And the thing about it is the fact that just the chorus. You may look like we do and talk like we do, but you know how it is. It's not one of us. So we're not talking about anything racial. We're talking about maybe political leanings, social strata, things like that. Because once again, you may look like we do, but all shades of opinion. Feed an open mind. Your values are twisted. Let us help you unwind. I mean, come on. That sounds like it could have come off social media present day. In fact, I think it was pretty prescient of Gabriel at the time to do that lyric. So Not One of Us, just a song that I think, once again, could be relevant today. So the next track on side 2 is Lead a Normal Life. That's track 3, and once again, we're going to skip past that. However, the last track on side 2, the last track on the album we're going to get to, because it is an epic protest song by Peter Gabriel, and it's really, he always had his political leanings and his opinions, but this one really kind of showed him putting his money where his mouth is, and he was really strong in his opinions about what was going on there. And it was a commentary on what was going on in South Africa at the time, and the name actually is dedicated to the gentleman he's talking about here. The gentleman was Stephen Biko, who passed away after being in police custody. He was an anti-apartheid activist in South Africa, and this song dedicated to him by Peter Gabriel, and the song is called simply Biko.
September 77, Port Elizabeth, weather fine.
A very powerful track indeed. A protest song from Peter Gabriel decrying what's going on in South Africa at the time, and it's called Biko. And I mean, some of the lyrics are just absolutely when I go to sleep at night, I can only dream in red. The outside world is black and white with only one color dead. I mean, that's, there are a lot of things going on back in the late 70s, back in South Africa with the apartheid government. And it's just, you can blow out a candle, but you can't blow out a fire. Once the flames begin to catch, the wind will take it higher. I mean, things like that. Just, a lot of really meaningful lyrics here. And this is really just Peter Gabriel not liking what he's seeing with the whole situation with the death of Stephen Biko, and just wearing his heart on his sleeve and saying, this is wrong, this is not good, we need to do something about it. And that's an interesting way to end the album, Biko, once again, off of the third Peter Gabriel solo album. And that is record number 2, Peter Gabriel, by Peter Gabriel, or as it's nicknamed, Melt. Now we'll get to record number 3 in our look at classic self-titled albums, Chicago Transit Authority. So this is the first album from the group Chicago Transit Authority. The name of the album is Chicago Transit Authority. And here's the thing. There was something else named Chicago Transit Authority too. The actual Chicago Transit Authority, the city agency that handled the trains and the buses and all that. Well, after this album came out, the real Chicago Transit Authority threatened legal action against the band unless they changed their name. So what they had to do for the second album is basically take out the Transit and Authority, and they became Chicago. And that's how we know them to this day. Now, the interesting thing about this self-titled album is Chicago Transit Authority was a self-titled album. When they changed their name to Chicago, their first album was called Chicago. So 2 in a row, self-titled album. Not like Peter Gabriel. It wasn't the case of different albums, same name. It was a case of different albums, different band name, and obviously different title too. And the reason why you don't hear about that album as much as a self-titled album is over the years it's just become commonly known as Chicago 2. And after a while, basically, Chicago is known, like most of their albums are Chicago 4, 5, 6. A lot of their albums are numbered, and basically that's that's the way they do it. But in this one here, it was the Chicago Transit Authority. But before we go riding on the rails with the Chicago Transit Authority, let's check out that inner groove. The Chicago Transit Authority album was released on April 28th of 1969, put out by the folks at Columbia Records. And the band's lineup at the time, Peter Cetera played bass and was the lead and backing vocals. To this day, he's one of the most recognized vocalists of that band. A fantastic guitarist and vocalist in his own right, a terrific guitarist and vocalist in his own right, Terry Kath. He played guitars, also lead and backing vocals. And another lead vocalist too, Robert Lamb. Bobby Lamb played keyboards and also lead and backing vocals. So depending on the track, you had a different lead singer. It could be Terry Kath, it could be Peter Cetera, it could be Bobby Lamb. Now as far as the horn section, we've got Lee Loughlin on trumpet, also claves and backing vocals. Jimmy Pankow on trombone and cowbell. Walter Parazator played the sax, the tambourine, and also provided some backing vocals. And the backbeat of it all handled by drummer Danny Serafine. The producer, James William Guercio. And the chart history, basically, it got all the way to number 17 on the U.S. Weekly Chart, number 15 on the year-end chart. And in total, the sales were double platinum with a total number of 2 million units sold. So what we're going to do is, this is basically, it's a self-titled album. It's also a debut album. So this is really the public's first taste of Chicago. Here we go. This is the opening track, and it's simply called Introduction.
We've all spent years preparing before this group was born. With heads and trumpets and we do thank the Lord. If you've nothing to do, sit back and let it through and let us play for you.
So let's see, you want an introduction to Chicago? Okay, great horn parts, a scorching guitar solo, Terry Kath on vocals. I'd say that's a good encapsulated preview of what's coming, not just from this album, but from this band as well. That was the first track on side 1 of Chicago Transit Authority and Introduction. Now next we have one of their most beloved hits of all time, and it's a song that on the album is much longer than it is on either the single or the radio edit. It starts off with piano and then some horns, and then it starts with what many people will recognize from like the opening of the single version, probably about 1:41 into the actual track. And the question the band is asking in this particular song, does anybody really know what time it is?
As I was walking down the street one day, a man came up to me and asked me what the time was that was on my watch.
there we go. So it was a huge hit, great song all over. And that was does anybody really know what time it is? Now, some people think this is a great way to really introduce yourself to Chicago. And it has to do with the title of the song, because once again, you've got some great things with the band. You've got some great horns. You've got some guitar, some acoustic guitar to start with, and just some vocals, and just it's a wonderful encapsulation of what this band was going to become. And the reason why I mentioned this is such a great introduction, obviously we had the song Introduction, but this one's a pretty good start too, because of the name, Beginnings.
I'm with you. It doesn't matter where we are or what we're doing. I'm with you, that's all that matters. Time passes much too quickly when we're together laughing.
So now we get the other voice that we haven't mentioned yet. We've mentioned Bobby Lamb, we mentioned Terry Kath. We have not mentioned Peter Cetera yet. And we're going to get to that right now because this is another single that came off the album. This one was a hit too. And it's called Questions 67 and 68. So yes, obviously Peter Cetera is the guy in Chicago with the really high vocals, and just you've got everything there. You've got guitars, you've got horns. I mean, this group is really, they had everything so well put together, and this just makes for a fantastic listen. So that's basically another one here off this album. Now we're going to get to another song that was actually released as a single, and it was the only cover done by this band on this album. And it was originally done by the Spencer Davis Group. In fact, Steve Winwood co-wrote the song. And this one is I'm a Man.
Well, my daddy sent a message about the whiskers on my chin. Never had no problem, 'cause I always paid the rent. I got no time for loving, 'cause my time is all you know. I spend a time in on some groovy kind of love. Come on.
But there we go. So that is record number 3, and technically the first of 2 self-titled albums to be recorded by this group under 2 different names. This one here is when they were still the Chicago Transit Authority and gave us the Chicago Transit Authority. And that's all the time we have for this installment of Goin Vinyl. However, join us again for our next episode, in which we'll bring you more vinyl goodness from the land where the platters still matter and the records still rock. Till then, I'm your host, Bill Robert. Thank you so much for Goin Vinyl with us.